Hi guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the In the Hub podcast, brought to you by Playbox Technology UK. Today, I'm speaking to Jason Thibeault, Executive Director at the Streaming Video Alliance. The Streaming Video Alliance is a not-for-profit organisation that seeks to shape the future of online video through education, guidance, and collaboration. We talk a bit more about the Alliance, how advertisers benefit from online content, and what we can expect from the future of streaming. Hope you enjoy. Right, so welcome to the In the Hub podcast today, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
That's very good to hear, very good to hear. So what we usually do on this podcast, we just launch straight into the questions. So if that's okay with you, we'll fire some of these off.
That sounds fantastic.
Awesome. So just for a little bit of background before we do start, for anyone who might not have heard of you before, how did you come to be involved in kind of streaming and the broadcasting industry in general? You know, where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, so that's kind of a funny question. So I've been a serial entrepreneur for a lot of my professional career. I spun out a .com back in the .com days, this big spin out. We got merged. We went down with the dot boom, and so went up with the dot boom and down with the dot bust with everybody else.
Yep.
And so after that, I did another startup, and it was focused on really sort of linking the desktop with the mobile phone, kind of pre-iPhone. And we were looking at that time, how do we help people watch videos that they have on their computers when they're away from their computers via their phone? So we kind of built, almost in a sense, a mobile video CDN. And that got me started. When that .com folded, we tried to raise money in 2008, which was a bad time to be raising money. I hooked up with a company called Limelight Networks. So I stepped into sort of a senior executive role there, and I eventually stayed like 8 years. So I was steeped in the online video and the broadcast industry. So I worked with a lot of broadcasters like Bell Canada and Bestel and some other folks to kind of bring them into the streaming realm. And at the same point, I was working with a lot of streaming companies to sort of help them develop better performing streaming services, better viewing experiences, et cetera, et cetera. And then I got recruited by the SVA, which really sort of put its tent in the ground in 2015. I got recruited by them out of Limelight in 2016. And then sort of the rest is history.
Yeah, I was going to say that's obviously led you up to the point now of being executive director at the SVA. But just a kind of like side note, it almost seems as if this industry always seems to kind of draw in serial entrepreneurs like yourself. It's I don't know whether that's a case of you just stumbling across these kind of technologies or whether it's been, your roadmap from the start. But it almost seems like broadcasting, streaming in general really does attract these kind of entrepreneurial mindsets. So I think that's quite interesting.
I mean, it does. I would say all, let's call them bleeding edge technologies do that. So,
yeah.
If you're looking at IoT or AI or ML right now, they're going to attract a lot of entrepreneurs, people who want to solve problems, right?
Yes,
and that's really what an entrepreneur does, right? They're not about necessarily at the beginning operationalizing or commercializing a technology. They're trying to figure out, how do I use this tech to solve this problem, or how do I solve a problem in the tech stack?
Yeah.
I got a weird background, right? I have a graduate degree in literature, but I've been a software developer for like 20 years. Like, I'm in a program in 15 languages. I mean, so I've got this weird mindset where I'm a builder. I like to build things. I like to solve tough challenges, and streaming represents that tough challenge. It still does, even though we have this, tech stack that's been evolving for the past, like, let's even say 20 years. There is still so much greenfield innovation to be had in terms of improving the experience, improving the delivery, improving the operationalization of it. It's just, there's so many problems to solve. So with that said, yeah, you're right. It does, it's like flies to honey. I mean, it bears to honey, whatever you want to say. It attracts people who want to solve problems.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what's so exciting about streaming to me personally is a day could go by, you never know what's around the corner, essentially.
Exactly. And think about that now too, right? So you have these big companies who have embraced streaming, Disney, Comcast, Sky, just companies, very well-established companies have embraced streaming. And now there are more challenges, like how do you deliver all this video at scale? Like, and not only to that, how do you deliver it, at scale, high quality to all these different devices, right? I mean, how different is that from broadcast? Broadcast was, how do I deliver this one stream, not even stream, how do I deliver this one signal to this set-top box? Like there was no diversity of ecosystem there. And so streaming, again, when you start looking at and picking apart all of those things, streaming has so many areas to focus and fix and improve and build upon that. Yeah, that's what's exciting about it. There's just so much to do.
Yeah, 100%. You'll never be bored, I don't think, Jason.
No.
So for anyone who doesn't already know, could you just quickly fill us in on what the Streaming Video Alliance is? What do you guys seek to achieve? Is there a kind of an end goal?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we have several pillars upon which we stand. Ultimately, we are a technology consortia, similar to other groups like us in the industry. So in Europe, you've got DTG and DVB. Out here, you've got SMPTE and IETF and W3C, CTA. We're all the same. We tend not to focus on standards. So the problem with standards is they take 2, 3, 4 years to ratify. And like what we just talked about, by the time you do that in the streaming world, the technology may have moved past the standard. So you're like, hey, look, we've got this thing all figured out. And people are like, well, we stopped doing that 2 years ago. We do this thing now. So we focused in on best practices, guidelines, specs, really things that were tangible and tactical for companies in the streaming industry to use right away. Like, how can I improve what I'm doing right now? Because part of the issue in streaming is, as everybody commercialized streaming, people were solving problems with Band-Aids, duct tape, and bubble gum. They were doing whatever they could to fix what problems they had to continue being able to provide a commercial service. And so that in and of itself, that makes streaming, just not like broadcast, right? We need to be flexible and agile. So the Streaming Video Alliance was founded in 2015, really to start solving some of those problems, to provide, solutions, even if they were interim solutions to the challenges that a lot of people face. So again, like the other groups, we have working groups across the workflow. We have member companies that send engineers, into our working groups. They get projects, they decide their own projects, they write their own documents, and then it goes through a ratification process. And then we release it free to the public, right? We want the whole industry to use our stuff. So, the pillars that we stand on are things like, education, right? We want to educate the industry on the challenges. If we can't all talk with the same language and cover the same problems, then how can we all come together and solve them? Things like diversity, sustainability. Again, we're focused on a core group of activities, and all of our events and things like that on top of those activities are meant to support those core goals.
Some fantastic goals, fantastic cause all round, isn't it, really? And it's great to see that there are these kind of organisations popping up in alliances that really are seeking to educate, for the most part, which is it's fantastic.
Yep.
I'm hesitant to bring this up. I know COVID's been a massive, massive thing for everyone over the past few years. I know it's obviously been huge. Now that we're kind of finally starting to come out the end of it, I don't want to jinx it or anything like that, but now that we're kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel from COVID and with vaccinations and everything, looking back, and you guys are, I imagine you guys will know this best. Do you have a kind of clear picture of how streaming performed during this time?
Yeah, I mean, the data's out there, right? It exploded. The growth was, exponential. And obviously that's partly because people were at home. And so they're like, wow, what can I watch at home? It was a shift. And we're starting to see now the reverse happen as people going back into the office. Subscriptions are sort of either tapering off, or people are matriculating out of their subscriptions and keeping a few, more than they had pre-COVID, but less than they had during COVID. We're starting to see that as well. But streaming as a whole, like, the growth has been astronomical. And the service providers have met the challenge, right? So there was a lot of data put out, like if you go to the NCTA, which is one of our member companies, but they are the National Cable and Telecommunications Association. They track sort of a lot of the service providers in the U.S. And the data that came out was these service providers, Verizon, Comcast, Charter, all those folks, like they met the demand with flying colors. Now, obviously, we had issues in other parts of the world, right? So the EU, really sort of asked, Netflix, and I think it was Amazon, to sort of tone down the bit rate, right? Hey, sorry, provide your users with less quality so that we can reserve some of our overall network bandwidth for people that actually need to get work done, like with Zoom meetings. And we don't really know if that would have had an impact, but they were being preemptive, which is fair enough. And so that leads back to the innovation thing. So now the innovation is, okay, well, how can we use less bandwidth but still provide the same quality? So, again, new challenges popped up even in the midst of this, momentous growth and adoption of streaming. Now, it goes without saying, broadcast is still king, right? Way more people watch broadcast television than they do streaming, but streaming is continuing to chisel into that broadcast grip, and even a lot of the broadcasters are shifting their technologies from what they were using before to IP based. And so then once you do that, now the broadcaster can say, like, well, we can not only provide this stuff to your set top box, but we can also provide you, our subscriber, our customer, with the ability to watch that content on your phone when you're outside of your home. So there are some tectonic changes, that are happening, that have been happening, that were accelerated by COVID, and now that we're, like what you said, coming out of it, and knock on wood, we are going to see those changes accelerate. And everybody's going to benefit from that. The broadcaster benefits because it's cheaper to deliver that kind of content in that manner, right? And laying fiber is expensive. ATSC 3.0 will solve some of that, but that's going to take a long time for those devices to come out into the market, like televisions and things. So it's kind of hard to wrap your arms around, like, how much the pandemic really affected the future of streaming. I don't know, what would have happened to streaming had we not had that. I think the growth would have happened, but it would have been so much slower. The acceleration that provided was just unprecedented.
Yeah, it really hit home for me when you said, obviously, just look at the amount of subscriptions you had coming into COVID and coming out. And it's, I look back and it's not just the kind of big platforms. During COVID, I was diversifying into some of these more niche platforms as well that provide content for obviously niche audiences. And I think that's quite interesting as well. You are seeing these kind of platforms pop up that cater to absolutely everyone.
Well, and we've been talking about that for a while. I mean, I have for a while, that, those are the companies that are going to eat into, the Netflix's market share, right? Because people will be able to support, like, let's say I want 2 or 3 streaming services, right? So I'm gonna do Netflix, I'm gonna do Disney, Amazon gives it to me as part of Prime. So I've got these 3 services. I really can only support a couple more, maybe, not only just pocketbook wise, but just time wise. And I'm going to go after content that's very, very interesting to me. Not just this, big buckets of content. And that's kind of the, like Netflix has become, a studio. Amazon has become a studio. Disney's already a studio. They're producing content you can't find anywhere else. So those, in a sense, are both general and niche at the same time. But yeah, those services that provide content to a very specific audience will always be, I think, successful before potentially they get gobbled up by a bigger company.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to bring it on to. It will be, they get swallowed up, basically.
Yep.
Which I hope doesn't happen. I like that kind of creative freedom that some of them do provide.
Absolutely.
And I hope it does stay that way. You did touch on it there, Jason. It's that whole idea of traditional broadcast obviously still remaining king. And obviously, from what you were saying there, while streaming continues this huge growth, linear television and viewing through satellite obviously remains that primary way that people consume content. Do you think streaming has a really long way to go in terms of overtaking that, or do you think it will ever triumph over linear television, or do you think they're two, they're not quite on a parallel roadmap? Do you think that they can coexist?
So when we talk about linear, that is just a way to watch television. That's a way to watch a video. And that means that the provider is telling you, the viewer, what's going to come on and when you can watch it. Now, linear can be delivered via traditional broadcast, or it can be delivered via streaming. It doesn't matter. So there are lots of linear channels on available via streaming. Like, look at Pluto, right? Pluto TV is largely a linear set of channels, right? It's here's what's on, and you can go and choose to watch. It's a very, very similar to our what we call our lean back television experience, right? I sit in my couch, I turn the TV on, and I go to the guide. That's what people are used to, and so that's happening, across the board. That's never going to change. People still want that. Look. So Netflix releases their content all in one, right? It's the binge model. But if you look at like HBO and Disney, they are doing a weekly release of content because that's what people like. It excites people. They're like, oh, I can't wait till the next episode next week. And the thing is, too, is that people don't spoil it on social media. So, so that linear model is never going to go away. In terms of how we access the content, whether that's via a service provider, like a network operator, like a Sky or a Liberty Global, in Europe, or an Orange or whatever, whether we access it through them and their traditional terrestrial broadcast system, or we're accessing it through some sort of streaming application, whether it be on the big screen TV in our living room, whether it be on our phone, on our computer, on a connected device like an Apple TV. That's the big shift that's happening. And again, that goes back to that, what I talked about before, the tectonic change and how broadcasters are looking at delivering content. It's so much cheaper to deliver it via IP networks than it is to deliver it via terrestrial fiber and satellite networks. It's just expensive. So, so the answer is, the real question is when will the streaming as a mechanism to deliver video overtake the terrestrial broadcast signal-based approach to delivering content? I'd probably say in the next 15 to 20 years, that's going to be done, right? We're going to put a fork in that. And again, it's all about it's about cost. Once you unshackle the video from those, that fiber and those terrestrial lines, and digitize it, right? Put it into bits and bytes and deliver it out via streaming. The things you can do to it are phenomenal, right? And broadcast tried to do that, right? They had a platform back in the day called OCAP. The idea was you as a user would have your remote control. You could do some stuff with the content, like the little buttons and things. It flopped miserably. But with streaming, like, you surround it by an app, or you surround the video by a website or a player, and all of a sudden you've got like ways to do amazing advertising, all this data you can pull from the user. So everybody wants that. Like, everybody wants that model. They don't want to stay in the traditional broadcast model. So it is shifting, but it's going to take still, probably another couple of decades.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think there is time for it to mature and like you said, go down these different pathways, find out what works,
Yep.
find out what doesn't, and get it perfect. You did just briefly touch on it there towards the end, and it is these kind of advertising possibilities that are available through over the top OTT and streaming video. How are you guys at the Alliance seeing advertisers leverage streaming content, to obviously maximize their return on investment? And I suppose most crucially, reach new audiences.
Yeah, I think that, so from a business model perspective, as the Alliance, we are, again, a technology consortia. So we don't deal with, the business of streaming. We deal with the technology of streaming. Now, mind you, there's a whole lot of technology on the back end of advertising for streaming. It's very complicated. It's broadcast is you would slot in a box like a Black Arrow, and your advertising would be good to go. So I'm done. Not with streaming, right? Streaming, there's just a bunch of different constituent parts. You got to get them to all work together. But yes, right. So for what we call AVOD services, so advertising-based services, we're seeing the shift from traditional broadcast television into streaming from advertisers, right? And the reason being is because you can target the ads so much better in streaming than you can on television. That's a big shift. Obviously, again, the lion's share is still with the lion's share of how people watch video content, which is traditional broadcast, but it is rapidly shifting. And you're seeing a lot of these experimentations now with streaming providers saying, like, well, can we have a advertising based version? Can we have a charge users for more money for non-advertising based. Look at like Peacock, right? Peacock launched advertising based. Hey, here's all our content for free. You just got to watch ads like you're used to watching on television, right? It's the replication of that model. So I think what we're going to see and what we're starting to see, within the alliance and outside of the alliance is that streaming operators are starting to experiment, right? What can we do in terms of ad supported content? How can we leverage our content to generate ads without angering people? Think about the issue, like how many times have you watched streaming and seen the same ad like 7 times in a row? That's an inventory issue. And so we're just not there yet, but we will be at a point where I think the advertising experience will operate in streaming much like the advertising experience does in traditional television. The pods might be smaller and the ad length might be smaller because, again, it's all about distraction. But I do believe that there's a lot of experimentation going on right now, and people are trying to figure it out.
Yeah, 100%. It clicked for me when obviously I was watching something on Catch Up earlier on today, and it was these ads being delivered to me based on location. So I don't know whether that was obviously IP address or when you sign up, increasingly they might be asking you for more information about yourself, mightn't they, as well, more data.
Well, and it's more than that, right? They watch what you watch, right? It's all data.
Yes, exactly.
So now we can sort of see, and then what do people like you tend to watch in relation to other people like you and what they watch, and maybe you'll want to watch this. So a lot of the advertising is, what we call addressable, right? So this is the big push in streaming is addressable advertising. It's how do you target the ad to you as the individual? It's possible. Sky has actually been doing it from their set-top box, which is IP based. They have an addressable advertising solution that can target ads to you in a specific room of your house.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy, but we know that those ads are much more valuable because they're targeted to you, and you have all this data then feeding into each other, right? So if you're on Facebook, the app is listening to you. Those ads are going into your Facebook ads. People are getting access to that data, aggregated data that's going into this other system. It's all interlinked. Everything you do online is going to impact and affect the ads that you see in your streaming video.
Yeah. 100%. And even a neat little feature I did find out today was I haven't seen it on too many streaming platforms, but obviously in terms of AVOD, when you click off the tab, the ads pause, and you have to be present on the tab, scrolled right up to the top of the page.
That's right.
For the content to play. And I was just like, oh, you've got me there, but
and it's funny to see like which advertising companies are okay with you fast forwarding the ad, right? So YouTube has that built in, which is you can skip the ad in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think users find that hugely valuable because if you giving me an ad that I don't find interesting and I have no interest in buying a sink, I don't want to watch that ad. And then you can use that data against my demographics and against my viewing history and my behavior to target better ads to me. I want better ads.
Yeah, it is all about data, really, isn't it, when you boil it down? And it's,
It is, yeah.
That's the way it's got to go. So, Jason, I was curious. I just wanted to throw this one in. How are you and the Alliance looking at virtual reality and VR content for streaming? Do you think it's, a force to eventually be reckoned with? Or do you think it's really still proving itself, or have you not taken notice at all?
Yeah, so actually it's yes to all of that. We have a VR study group. So we have a group that's looking actively. They've published a document that looked at the landscape of VR 360-degree video, right? So what's being done, what are the technologies in play? Like, what do you need to know in order to be able to even start looking at producing some content like this? That group just finished up a document on XR. And it's a very big document. It's sort of what are the use cases, what are the applications, how can video play in this, how does XR relate to video, streaming video, and all that. That document's going through an editing process. It'll then move into ratification. So we'll see it at the end of the year, probably. But yes, we are big believers that VR, that virtual reality is it's twofold, right? One, it's a technology challenge to solve. So how do you tell stories in a virtual environment? That's going to require a new paradigm of storytelling, right? Because if you're in a virtual environment and you turn to the left to look at something and you miss the character saying something to the right or doing something, how do you tell stories in that manner. And so that lot of challenges there, to solve. And then there's also sort of what's the applicability of watching traditional told stories in a virtual environment, like big screen on the Oculus, right? Can I watch a movie there with my friends? I sit next to them. So we are looking at all of those technologies. And of course, with live sports, right? How do you overlay data on, in an AR or XR type environment so that you can, see player data, player information, guys are scoring. What are they? How often has he scored a goal from that point on the pitch? So it's yes, we believe that is a huge future of streaming. That is a part of streaming's future. And so we are actively engaged in looking at the technologies and understanding where the challenges are right now so that we can begin to build specs and things like that. I mean, one of the projects that we're working on is, how to reduce latency in live streaming VR video. Right. So that's a big issue, right? You put your headset on and you're watching a soccer match, a football match in VR. Like if there's any latency, right? Photon to motion latency, like you're literally probably going to start puking. So how do you solve that? And then at the same time, how do you, improve the quality when somebody pans to the right or to the left? How do you reduce bandwidth, save bandwidth, when you know that you need really 4K per eye? So we have an actual proof of concept right now. There's a lab that Verizon has set up and working with a bunch of member companies to sort of test out network optimization to improve the delivery of that big content stream to the devices, without hogging everything. Just, compression, encoding, everything in between. So yeah, we're big proponents of VR, and we believe that that's a big part of the future of streaming.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic to hear. It's when I did some research about VR, it's so often you see people talk it down, or write it off. I think it is a case, like you said, of us trying to come over these hurdles and completely understand it. But it's still so fresh, isn't it, as a technology? People seem to forget. Technology moves fast nowadays as well, doesn't it?
That's right.
So it's,
That's right. And I mean, VR has been around for a long time and it's failed a bunch of times.
Yeah,
but so did mobile, right? So, I mean, people kept bagging, and no one's going to look at the internet on their mobile phone. No one's going to watch video on their mobile phone. And 10 years later, it's like, everyone's watching video on their mobile phone. So VR, we're at the point now with like the Oculus Quest 2 and a couple of other devices. We're at the price point where people can afford a really awesome untethered VR experience. So now you've got that. Gaming is the first use case, so people are playing games. But the next thing is like, oh, well, hey, I'm just gonna, since I've already got this on my face, I'm gonna watch that YouTube video I wanted to watch. Oh, I'm gonna watch that movie with my friends I want to watch. Oh, I'm gonna just jump into that football match. It just takes time and adoption. And so, I just look at all the naysayers like, whatever. VR is coming, AR is coming, XR is coming. It's coming to video. Give it 10, 15 years. We're all going to be looking back going, why did we doubt this? So yeah, it's going to happen.
I think, the one thing I'm probably most excited about in that respect is live sport and being involved in that in some way, shape, or form. So that will tide me over. I'm very excited.
There's so many cool ways and things that people are going to, and that's what we're in. We're in the experimentation phase right now. And obviously, streaming operators and content rights holders with deeper pockets are more willing to experiment because they can write off that for as a cost of doing business versus a smaller company who's like, listen, if I invest in something like that, I got to see a return on my investment. And when the bigger guy doesn't really need to see a return on investment just yet, they know that they're just experimenting. They're finding out what's going to stick.
And I hope it sticks, Jason. I really hope it does.
It will. It will. Don't worry. Yeah. It'll stick.
And then, Jason, this is a question we ask at the end of every episode. And today I'm slightly tweaking it just to kind of revolve around the streaming industry in particular. But if you could sum it up in one word only, what do you envision for the future of the streaming industry?
I would probably say growth. Right, it's just going to continue to grow. The other one word, if I was going to give another one word, it would be evolution. Right, so the technology is going to continue to evolve and change. So those two things are, they're not mutually exclusive. They're tied together.
I was going to say, it's very much two things that coexist, isn't it? Two things that will tie together. And after this chat, to be honest, I'm coming away feeling a lot more excited about what the future will hold for streaming.
You should be.
It's the VR, Jason. It's the VR. So, obviously, Jason, thank you for joining us today. I really do appreciate it. Are there any kind of exciting plans in the pipeline for the Streaming Video Alliance that you could talk to us about today?
Yeah, we've got a lot of docs coming out this year. We're always looking at new areas of interest, so things like edge compute, AI, ML. Talking about things as the technology in the stack moves to code as infrastructure and serverless functions. How do we help streaming operators embrace those and use those and evaluate them? And then we're also looking at, from an education perspective, launching a university, right? So helping not only the industry get more educated on the challenges, but also helping folks like broadcast engineers transition into streaming engineers. So that'll be coming out later this year. We'll have some free content, and then next year we'll probably start up with some courses, some paid courses, and maybe some multi-course topics and things like that. But we're really excited about being able to delve into another way to help educate and help the industry.
Yeah, no, it sounds absolutely fantastic. I think we'll be keeping an eye out for that one. And then how can people get in touch with the Alliance directly if they've got any inquiries or want to get in touch?
They can actually email me. So it's really easy. It's just JT at streamingvideoalliance.com. Yeah, just shoot me an email. We have some chat options available on the website as well. And then we've got contact forms, but that's the easiest way. They all come to me anyway. So that's the easiest way to get a hold of me, is just email me.
Just go straight to the source. Jason, so what we'll do is we'll put a link to the website as well in the podcast description.
Cool.
So anyone on Spotify, Apple Music, feel free to head to the description. You can find the website there. So Jason, I think that's everything I had for you today. I really do appreciate you taking the time to answer all these questions. And it was great to kind of hear just all the exciting developments that streaming's got going on. And it's so non-stop, isn't it? It's...
Yes. So back to the pandemic, we grew our biggest. I mean, we grew by almost, 20 or 25%. And we're close to 100 member companies now. During the pandemic, people were, oh my gosh, there's these real world problems. We got to help solve these issues. Yeah, streaming is so exciting right now. I'm super excited to be where I'm at as well. I mean, the organization is amazing. Our board of directors is amazing. Our member companies are amazing. So it's so much fun to be helping drive the technology evolution within this industry.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, Jason. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's really been great.
Cheers, Jason.